the way to describe the argument usually in many of these sites and many of these digital techniques is the notion of profile. What is a profile? Well, philosophically it would be defining a substance by its attributes. And you list the attributes, and then the question is, philosophically, since at least Plato, is the list of attributes the whole there is of a substance or not? We are not going to deal with this philosophical question, although it could be preached here with quite a lot of theoretical insight, but that's not, it should not be drawn in theology, in spite of the place for the remnant of this talk. But it's a very practical question, which is you interrogate what is an entity in the data set that you have assembled, and you begin to list things you like or dislike, people you have been associated to with Facebook. I'm sure everyone here has a Facebook page, right? Yes, everyone has. And then you can actually ask what is an event, and what is the event is to gain the list of people who are associated with. And of course, this is great, because the profile is the digital version of a point made in actor network theory. What is an actor? It's network. How do you know it's the network? Well, you list in the data set the sort of CV, the curriculum vitae of someone. And that's what we do constantly. If you meet someone you don't know, you just go there on the web and Google it. And what do you get? It's a list. It's a list of attributes. This guy has done this, has done that, has published this paper, and so on. It's so common that we don't even see it. And what is nice is that this list, and that will be my main theoretical point in this lecture, this list is not an individual list. It's actually a collective. No, it's a collecting argument. It's a collecting activity, not a collective activity. I'll come back to that. So if you know of someone that he has been or she has been professor at this university, got this diploma, published this paper, you begin to profile, to list or load the substance, this guy, which is a proper name, usually, with a long list of attributes. And of course, it's completely reversible, and that's a very important tenet of actor network theory. What's a network? The network is the list of its actors. And the fact, we knew that, of course, from actor network theory day one. But the question is how easy it is to navigate a data set where you can reverse the actor and the network. And that's where the difficulty came from. The easier it is, the more sensible, so to speak, it means to talk about actor network. It's much more easier now with this notion of profile and the navigation into the data set than it was before. So of course, if you say, what's the city of the curriculum vitae? It seems silly to list all the people born in this city. But if you say, what's the diploma? What's worth a diploma? Well, the diploma is worth the list of people who got. And if they are very, very bad people who got it, what you mean by this diploma decreases. And that's what the way we do constantly search. If you want to say, I'm going to get an honorary degree from a university, you say, who else got the university degree? And the list of other people mean, oh yes, it's a good honorary degree. If they don't know, it's a dishonorary degree. Which is not my case, of course. So, it means that when you want to define an actor, you list the attribute, but every single attribute, if you want to know what it is, you make a list of actors who got it, right? And the ease with which this reversibility is made possible makes a difference in the way we analyze the relation between qualitative and quantitative data set. And that's my main point. The very possibility of moving fast and easily from the elements to the aggregate and back means that the sort of fetishes of social theory and organization, so much of organization theory, that basically we have to choose a standpoint between the individual or the collective and make some sort of aggregate and link between the two has become moot. And that's the point I make. I'm not making a point about the digital revolution. I'm not paid by Google. It's not an argument about the fact that we now can do all our studies on the screen without ever doing any fieldwork. No, it's just the point. The occasion we have of navigating quickly through profiles and the reversibility from the actor to the networks, do they allow to rethink organization differently? That's all what I'm going to do. It's not an argument about technical revolution, it's an argument about the way we can rethink. How can we rethink it? Well, from actor network theory argument, we sort of know. Can we manage to study an organization without supposing at any point a methodological distinction between the micro interaction and the macro structure? I mean, that has been the basis of lots of work, and the image I showed before on Paris Invisible tried to make sort of more sensitive this sort of feel for an organization. I call this the two-level standpoint. The two-level standpoint is to say, if you are a qualitativist studying micro-interaction, one method. If you are a quantitativist or study big organization, bigger structure, another method. Which has no more sense than if you were a geometer and you want to measure a mountain and you say, mountain has one way of measuring them, valley or plain have another way. Which doesn't mean nothing, because you would not even detect the differences. But that's basically, in our field, social theory, and in lots of organization studies, we take for granted that there is a difference between the micro and the macro, and that this difference is reflected in the method of inquiry. So we confuse the consequence, yes, a mountain is bigger than a valley, with the way to measure, and when you measure, you say no difference at the beginning at all. But the point, that was very difficult to do when we had to choose between qualitative data set and quantitative data set. Of course, the people who do quantitative survey can always go back to the original tick on a questionnaire, but who does it? It's very difficult to do. But in the example I show, it's very easy, because you can go from the aggregate 4 million book to one book and one instance and one phrase. Of course, you could do it before, but the fact that you could in principle is very, very different from being able to do it for real. And that's my point. We have a social theory of our data set. If we have an easy access to this document, and if it's feasible very quickly to go from the qualitative to the quantitative, we don't have the same social theory than when it was difficult. I mean, there's slight technical determinism here. It's a small weakness of the argument, but you will forgive this little. So my argument, if you want a simpler version, is that with the notion of profile, with the easy manipulation of data set, the argument, the actor network argument that there is one level standpoint is, let's say, more easy to grasp. People might begin to understand it, okay? Which is, of course, the vindication of Gabriel Tard, and I allude here to the reenactment that I did with Bruno on the right playing Durkheim and myself playing Tard. It's on my website. It's translated in English, and in Monadology and Sociology, which is soon to be translated in English, Tard made the point I'm going to make in a minute about monad. So if you have followed the argument until here, it means that the discontinuity between the micro and macro is an artifact of the type of data and the type of navigation. It's the difficulty of navigating, which means that we put a lot of emphasis on the difference and the discontinuity between the micro and the macro. But now, if we sort of use and begin to understand this experience of search, the two-way navigation is what we are used to. The two endpoints lose their privilege. There are lots of ways of assembling the whole, and there is no individual entities anymore. What counts is the green arrow here in this argument, if you bear with me. So what I'm going to do, and I'm sorry to make a point which is so technical in an assembly which is so large, and in a place which is more used to, well, simpler things, not the word, for church. Let's say, well, let's forget. What I want to do is simply to relocate the usual distinction between micro and macro in a different experience of search. What is the experience? Well, we go from a dot. We don't know what we are looking for, we just have a proper name. Someone is coming to see us, I just have the name. I Google it, what happens? Well, you begin to have a CV